I made a small mistake with his dad at New Year's party. Now he wants to ruin my life.
I've done something that's making it difficult for me to think straight. My husband wants a divorce from me now because I got carried away with his father at our annual New Year's party. In fact, I think I've done something stupid, and I'm now facing the consequences of it. I'm not even going to try to make myself look good or seek validation because there's absolutely nothing I'll say that will not paint me out as a good person at all. I've messed up big time and I'm 100% aware of it. I just need help from you all. I'll take any help I can get. I just want to make sure that I can get this whole thing fixed. My name is Brianna, and I'm a 29 years old accountant. I'm married to Luke, a 30-year-old accountant. Yes, my husband and I are accountants, and you can very well say that it's our mutual careers that brought us together. We met at a function together and got interested in each other. I loved his personality and charisma a lot, and for the first time, I broke my rule of never wanting to date a man that does the same thing I do. I never wanted to date someone that has the same profession as me because I just felt like it will make us disagree a lot and there'll be no time because we'll be engaged in different activities. But I had no choice, ladies and gentlemen, lol. I got charmed by Luke and I forgot all about my rule. In fact, I didn't think we'd last at first. I thought it would just be a fling because I didn't think Luke was ready to settle down. At least I'll speak for myself when I say that I wasn't ready to settle down yet. I'd been single for 6 months before I started dating Luke, and I never imagined getting married to him 2 years later. But it happened, and we got married and never looked back. Well, we never looked back until now. Now, I think I'm losing my husband, and that's just me hanging on to an invisible thread of hope. I feel like I've lost him already. What hurts me the most is that his father is involved. Luke hates his father, and now I've screws up. The name of Luke's father is Adrian, and he's 48 years old. He had Luke when he was just 18 years old. He met Luke's mother, Nancy, when they were in high school, and they dated till their final year of high school. But Nancy got pregnant just after they were done with high school. They were both 18 years old, but they were still naive. Nancy's mother was sent out of her home and forced to live with Adrian. They basically started a family immediately. Nancy couldn't go to college, but Adrian was able to go. Long story short, Adrian cheated on Nancy 2 years after she gave birth to Luke. They broke up and Adrian never bothered seeing Luke again till he was in college. Luke was never ready to accept his father back into his life because his mother always told him how he left her. Adrian always tried getting back into Luke's life, but Luke promised never to betray his mother. So, I hope you guys now understand why what I did is a very big deal. Luke cannot stand seeing me and he's very upset. But wait, before you start judging me, let me make it clear that I didn't have an affair with Luke's father. I would never, and I have never. It's disgusting and stupid, and I never did that. It's just that something happened at our New Year party, and I'm on the verge of losing my husband. Luke and I have been married for 2 years now, and we always find time to attend the New Year's celebration Nancy throws. Nancy is now married to another man, and he's the one that stepped up to be Luke's father. He's quite rich, so he likes to throw a New Year's party every year. Luke always makes sure he never misses it, and even while we were dating, he always invited me. I think I've gone to a total of 4 New Year's parties with him. The first one I went as his friend, the second one as his girlfriend, and the third and fourth one as his wife. But now, I don't think I can make it to the 5th New Year's party. I don't think Luke will stay married to me till then. There's usually no drama at each New Year party, but this year's own was immensely exceptional. There was a lot of drama, and I'm still shocked at how things just escalated all of a sudden. I'm writing this to you all barely 24 hours after the New Year's party. Writing is my way of venting and keeping my emotions in check, so when I found myself in this compromising situation, I decided to write as my way of letting off some steam. The drama started from Adrian's sudden presence at the New Year's party. Yes, you actually read that right. He suddenly showed up at the New Year's party. Luke and I were shocked, but Luke was the one I was really worried for. He always told me how much he hated his father and despised his presence. I know the pain he feels anytime the topic of his father's betrayal is brought up. I'm sure any man that didn't even grow up to see his father would feel the same. Whenever he told me stories about his father, I never tried to convince him to forgive him. I never tried playing the devil's advocate because I know the man I married would never hate someone without a valid reason. That's why I know that for him to ask for a divorce, I screwed up and I'm not denying that. I'm at fault and I'm wrong for getting carried away. I never should have done something to upset Luke so much. I would have felt better if it was somebody else. I despise myself for hurting him through his father. If I knew this would happen, I would have taken another decision that day. But I guess if wishes were horses, beggars would fly as high as they wanted. Before the New Year's party, Adrian had always been showing up whenever he wanted. He always did that before. But whenever he came, the gatekeeper always took care of him. Luke didn't even have to see him most times. He just got to know from his mother that Adrian showed up. Before I go on, I'd like to describe Adrian as the perfect definition of an opportunist and selfish bastard. I hate him with every living fiber in me, and I believe that he should never be happy after what he'd done that day. I'm at fault for falling in his trap, but that doesn't mean I'll not wish that his karma finds him. He left his family, but never expected them to end up getting successful. So he came back years later and thought it was best to ruin their lives all over again. I never really had an encounter with him before. I'd only seen him once, and that was when he gate deadhead our wedding event. That was the only time I'd seen him, but I always recognized him from the pictures that were hung on Nancy's gate. It was so her gatekeeper could recognize him and never let him in. He was only able to get into the New Year's party because the gatekeeper had been on leave as he traveled to go celebrate the New Year's with his own family. It was someone else that had been tending to the gate, and the person had not been careful enough to take notes of the faces coming in. Adrian used that opportunity to get into the party. On that particular day, Luke and I had a very intense argument. If you're wondering how intense our argument was, it was actually very intense, and we almost didn't attend the party. We were having an argument about trying to have a child. Luke was ready, and I wasn't ready because I was being considered for promotion at work. I knew that getting pregnant would automatically mean that I wouldn't get the promotion again, so that made me very worried. I've always wanted children, but I thought that we had time, and there was no need to rush. I didn't want to rush into it and end up resenting myself and blaming other people for my choices. I also love my job a lot, and I've always worked hard so I could get promoted and just feel like my hard work helped me get something. That's why I wanted to wait till I had my promotion for about a year before we tried having children. My decision made Luke very angry because he felt like he had given me enough time. In his defense, he's actually right, because before we got married, we agreed to try having children 2 years after our marriage. I thought my promotion would come a little later, but then I was surprised when I was told I was on the list. That's why I told Luke to wait a little longer, but he wasn't having it. Our argument lasted close to an hour, and we never came to any reasonable resolution. We were in no position to attend a party, but because Luke always promised his mother that he'd never miss any of those parties, we had to keep that promise and go. We didn't speak to each other throughout the car ride, and even when we got to the venue, we ignored each other. I've never been known to handle my alcohol. In fact, it's common knowledge among his family and mine that I'm a very bad drinker, but because of how angry and irritated I'd been, I had too many shots. I don't even know what was mixed in those drinks, but I just took anything the waiter had in his tray. I felt comfortable drinking because I believed that I was safe in Nancy's house with Luke around. I knew almost all the faces that attended the party, and even though Luke and I were not in speaking terms, I still believed that I had no reason to worry. It was an annual New Year's party that I'd attended 4 times in a row. I didn't think I'd see someone that would want to take advantage of my drunken state. So, barely 30 minutes after drinking, I had to run to the toilet to puke. I'd drank too much and was having a hard time standing up straight. I didn't see Luke around, and I was afraid of puking in front of everyone, so I went alone. Before I got back to the party, I stumbled upon Adrian. I still remember seeing him in the hallway, and he asked what was wrong with me. Yes, I was drunk, but I can remember that part. I don't handle alcohol well, even if it's a glass of wine, so I'm sure whatever I took was not enough to wipe out my memory. It was just my body system acting out like it usually did whenever I took alcohol. I recognized Adrian the moment I saw him, and then I asked him what he was doing at the party. He said some things I don't remember, and then he offered to hold my hand so I could stand upright. I refused to hold his hand at first, because even though I wasn't thinking straight, I knew that the fact that Adrian was dressed like he wanted to conceal his identity meant that he had bad intentions in mind. But Adrian didn't give up and he kept pestering me to take his hand. In that process, showed up. I don't remember everything that happened, but I know that Luke got into an argument with Adrian and questioned him because he saw both of us standing alone. I was still upset with him, so I left both of them standing there. I went back to the party and decided to take a seat because I felt like the alcohol was going to make me dizzy. While I was sitting there, Luke came to sit beside me. He was very angry, and then he asked me why I was alone with his father. I explained everything to him, but he was still upset. He then warned me never to speak to his father again. While Luke and I were having the back and forth, Adrian showed up and tried causing a scene. Yep, he told me he pitied me because I was letting a man dictate who I spoke to. He started saying things to get into my head, and he accused Luke of being a controlling husband. He took advantage of the situation because he noticed my drunken state and wanted to use that to his advantage. Luke didn't say anything because the guests were starting to look our way, and he didn't want to embarrass his mother and draw more attention. If you're wondering what happened that made Luke ask for a divorce, then you're in luck, because that's what I'm about to say. Adrian asked me for a dance while I was seated with Luke. Luke told me not to dance with him, and then he walked me to sit down while he went to call the gatekeeper so he could escort Adrian out. After he left, Adrian managed to convince me to dance with him, and he told me he had something important to tell me. Yes, that's all he said to me, and I foolishly took his hand and started dancing with him. I don't really remember what we spoke about while dancing, but I know we didn't do anything inappropriate because I asked his mother just a few hours ago, and she assured me that all we did was dance. She was the one that narrated most of the things that happened to me, but she told me Adrian held my waist, and I didn't shrug his hands off. I danced with him, and while we were dancing, Luke came back with the gatekeeper and saw me dancing with his father. He was very angry, and he tried separating us, but I lashed out at him and called him a control freak in front of everyone. Yes, I did that, and I'm not going to deny it because I remember doing that to him. I let my anger over our argument get to my head, and then I lashed out of him for no reason. I also let myself get swayed by his father's words, and that was wrong. I understand why he's angry because it felt like I chose to listen to his father instead of him. It felt like I picked Adrian over Luke, and I made it seem like I was judging him based on his father's words. He hates his father, and he's told me that almost every day. For me to have let myself get loose like that meant that I used his weakness against him. I'm wrong, and I'm disgusted with myself. According to his mother, Nancy, Luke left the party immediately after I called him a control freak. She told me that he appeared to be very angry, and he didn't even speak to her before he left. That's the first time he's done something like that, and it's my fault. I'm so ashamed right now because I cannot believe that I caused such a scene on such a special day. I let my thoughts get into my head, and I ruined my marriage. How could he forgive me? I know I messed up big time. I'm even embarrassed that Nancy bathed me and helped me change my clothes. According to her, I was quite drunk after everything and I was puking a lot. I can't believe I started my new year out like this. I'm also quite disappointed because I know it must have also been hard for Nancy to watch her daughter-in-law dance with the same man that left her and her son. The fact that she's suppressing her feelings and helping me out makes my guilt worse. I disrespected her too. I shouldn't have done what I did. I should have controlled my emotions. Getting promoted at work is not more than having a peaceful marriage. I called him a control freak because I thought he was trying to control my life by dictating when I got pregnant. That must have made him very upset. But what's worse is the fact that I danced with his father and let him hold my waist. I don't know why Adrian even did what he did. What does he stand to get by dancing with me? I don't know if he has any ulterior motives because it honestly doesn't make any sense. What does he stand to gain by telling me all those things about his son? He kept coming back and asking for a chance back into his son's life. Why does he think doing that would bring his son closer to him? I hold a grudge, and I plan on making Adrian explain himself. If I didn't mess up by drinking, I would not even give him the time of day to begin with. It's not his fault. I'm the irresponsible adult that allowed things to get out of hand. I'm still at Nancy's place because she advised me not to go see him. She's his mother, and she knows that when he's angry, he likes to have time alone. I also know that about him, and that's why I've not tried going to see him. But barely 6 hours ago, Luke came here and asked to see me. I was very happy because I foolishly thought that he was going to forgive me. I fell on my knees and begged him with tears in my eyes. I told him I was extremely sorry and that I didn't mean to hurt him. At first, he just stood there and didn't say a word, but after some time, he told me he wanted a divorce. I was shocked. In fact, I was beyond shocked because I wasn't expecting that from him. I thought I heard something else, and I asked him to repeat himself again. He did that and said exactly what he said before. I held his clothes and told him I was sorry. I tried everything, but his kind was made up. He told me he wanted a divorce and that he couldn't stand the fact that I teamed up with his father to embarrass him. I tried to make him understand that I wasn't in my right senses, but then he dropped another shocking revelation. He told me he also felt it was best for us to break up because he didn't see the need of staying married to a woman that didn't have the same parental choices like he did. He also demanded an apology to his mother. That was all he said before leaving me alone once again. In other words, he wants to ruin me because there's nothing more hurtful than the thought of losing him. I really hoped things would be right, but I guess it's not happening. I thought he'd forgive me, but he didn't. Do I blame him? Absolutely not. I do not blame him for the things he did because I know he's only reacting to what I did. I'm the one that deserves to be blacked. But I'm selfish. I just can't end my marriage like this. I want to make it work. I want him to forgive me. I don't want my desire to get promoted to get in between our marriage. My husband deserved more and I want to make it up to him. I can't let his vengeful father get in between us, and I can't let my wrong choices ruin our 4 years of knowing each other. I need help, guys. Any ideas would be very much appreciated. I'll appreciate whatever you guys suggest. Just please help me out because I'm tired and I'm giving up. Update. First of all, I want to tell you all that I'm immensely grateful for all you've written and suggested. I never imagined so many suggestions, and I really want to say a big thank you. After updating you all that day, that was on January 1st, I decided to go see Adrian and give him a piece of my mind. I wanted to know why he thought it was right for him to do what he did. I couldn't sleep just thinking about how he had the audacity to hold my waist and dance with me when he could see that I was drunk. It was hard finding his place because I'd never been there before, and I never thought I'd have a reason to go there. But life happened, and I had to ask someone to ask around for the location of his apartment. I finally found it, and the surprising thing was that I saw his wife and 2 children there too. I knew he started his own family because I'd heard Nancy talking about it before. What I just couldn't understand was why he decided to keep tormenting Luke and Nancy when he'd already moved on with his life. Long ago, when I saw him at his apartment, I asked him that, and he told me he was just trying to have his son back because he thought it was unfair that Nancy was the one at the receiving end of his care. Adrian felt like Luke was supposed to give him money now that he's a successful accountant. That's why he kept on coming and trying to get back into Luke's life. He felt like he was being cheated. When I asked him why he held my waist and danced with me, he told me that was his only way of getting Luke's attention. Yes, in other words, Adrian is a big bag of crap. I left his apartment immediately because I knew it was pointless talking to someone that was so entitled to something they didn't ever work hard for. I was very angry, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. I went back to our house, but Luke served me divorce papers instead. While I stayed with Nancy, he got the divorce papers ready. I guess I started my new year with getting divorced. He's not ready to charge his mind even though I'm hurt, I understand. He's a man that holds a grudge on his father. There's nothing I can do to validate my actions that day. He can never unsee his wife picking his father's side and insulting him. Even though we get back together, he'll always remember that day. And then there's the issue of having a child. He's not ready to wait, and I'm not ready now. I tried doing everything you guys suggested, but I've decided to let it go. I know that I am not ready to be a mother, and he's very sure he's ready to be a father. If I get promoted now, we'll have to wait another 2 years, and he's not ready. Nancy strictly believes that we're getting divorced over something very trivial, but there's nothing she can do. Her son is a man of his own, and she cannot question his marital life. It's a sad goodbye, but I had to say it anyway. I'm just thankful we don't work in the same back, because that would have stung. It would have been hard to see him every day, knowing we're going through a divorce. At the end of the day, I take full responsibility for my actions, and I believe that with these lessons I've learned, I'd never act recklessly in the future ever again.
Hi Reddit, Kenneth here. I always thought I had a pretty good handle on life. A stable job as a software engineer, a comfortable apartment in San Francisco, and a marriage that, while not perfect, seemed solid enough. But I guess life has a way of throwing curvy balls when you least expect it. Let me take you back to how this all began, a day that started like any other, but ended up turning my world upside down. It was a typical foggy morning in the city. Melissa, my wife, had already left for her job at the marketing firm. I was working from home as usual, my day planned out with meetings and code debugging. Our apartment, a quaint space with a view of the bustling streets below, was unusually quiet without her presence. As I was getting ready to dive into my work, I noticed something odd under our bed. It was a small, leather-bound book, partially hidden under the loose floorboard that we always kept meaning to fix, but never got around to. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled it out. It was Melissa's diary. Now, I'm not the type to pry into someone's private thoughts, but something about the way it was hidden made me pause. I flipped through the pages, and that's when my world stopped. The diary detailed Melissa's secret meetings, not with clients or friends, but other men. The level of detail was staggering. Descriptions of dates, emotions, even intimate moments. I sat there, the diary in my hands, feeling a mix of disbelief and betrayal wash over me. How long had this been going on? Why would Melissa do this? Our marriage had its ups and downs, sure, but I never suspected she would step outside it. I tried to process it all. The diary entries ranged over several months, and the realization that my wife had been living this double life right under my nose was gut-wrenching. I felt like a fool, the last to know about the reality of my own marriage. I closed the diary, my mind racing with questions. Do I confront her right away? Do I gather more evidence? What do I even say? The trust I had in Melissa, in us, felt shattered. As I sat in our quiet apartment, surrounded by memories of a relationship that now felt like a lie, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't just let this go. There had to be a confrontation. But first, I needed to figure out how to handle this bombshell. So, Reddit, that's where my story begins. The day I found out my wife was cheating on me, and the day my quest for the truth and for what to do about it started. Stay tuned, because believe me, it gets even more complicated from here. Hey again, Reddit, Kenneth here. After finding Melissa's diary, my world was spinning. I couldn't just sit there with my emotions boiling over. I needed answers, hard evidence. So I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started my own secret mission, gathering evidence to confront Melissa about her affairs. Here's how that chapter of my life unfolded. In the days following the discovery, I became obsessed with confirming the diary's revelations. I started looking back at the past months, sifting through our shared memories for any signs I might have missed. It was like watching a movie where you already know the plot twist, and suddenly all the subtle hints make sense. I remembered the late-night calls Melissa said were from her office, her sudden interest in new hobbies, and the weekends she spent visiting her parents. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started falling into place. The inconsistencies were there, hidden in plain sight. Then came the hardest part: gathering more evidence. I felt like a detective in my own home, trying to piece together the reality of my wife's double life. I checked bank statements for unusual expenses, looked for receipts, and even started paying attention to her routine and the way she dressed for work. One evening, I followed her. Yeah, I know how it sounds, but I had to see for myself. I watched from a distance as she met some guy in a cozy downtown restaurant. They were laughing, touching. It was more than just a friendly meetup. That sight, guys, it was like a punch in the gut. My Melissa with someone else. It was real, and it hurt like hell. I also started taking notes, keeping a log of her comings and goings, matching them with the entries in her diary. It was meticulous and emotionally draining work. I felt like a stranger in my own life, spying on my own wife. But with every new piece of evidence, my resolve hardened. I couldn't confront her without being absolutely sure. I couldn't risk her talking her way out of it with excuses. I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't deny or twist. And as much as I was gathering evidence, I was also preparing myself emotionally. Each new discovery was a blow, but it also steeled me for the inevitable confrontation. I was building a case not just against Melissa's actions, but also against the life of lies we had been living. So there I was, Reddit, a regular guy turned amateur detective, uncovering the painful truth of my marriage bit by bit. And let me tell you, nothing prepares you for something like this. But I had to keep going. I needed to see this through for my own sanity. Stay tuned, because this rabbit hole goes deeper. And the confrontation? Well, let's just say it was anything but ordinary. Hey Reddit, it's Kenneth again. So, where were we? Ah, yes, the aftermath of my newfound career as a detective in my own love story gone wrong. But let me tell you, gathering evidence was just one part of the ordeal. The real battle was happening inside me, a tornado of emotions that I could barely keep in check. Every day felt like walking through a storm. Anger, sadness, betrayal, these words don't even begin to cover what I was feeling. I was angry at Melissa for her deception, sad about the crumbling of our marriage, and felt utterly betrayed by the person I trusted the most. Sleep became a distant memory. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything in my mind. What did I do wrong? Were there signs I ignored? It was like a never-ending loop of doubt and self-blame. My work started to suffer, and I found myself zoning out, lost in thoughts. That's when I realized I needed to talk to someone. Bottling up wasn't helping. I decided to confide in my closest friend, Mike. He's been my buddy since college, the kind of friend who's more like a brother. I remember that conversation vividly. We met at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown, away from the prying eyes of our regular haunts. The moment I started telling him everything, from the diary to my late-night sleuthing, I could see the shock on his face. Man, I had no idea, he said, his eyes wide with disbelief. He listened, really listened, as I poured out everything. The anger, the pain, the sense of utter betrayal. Mike was a rock, not interrupting, just letting me vent. After I was done, he leaned back, rubbing his chin, a habit when he's deep in thought. Ken, this is messed up, but you gotta confront her. You can't live like this, man. But do it smartly. Be calm, collected. Don't let your emotions get the better of you. His words made sense, but it was easier said than done. How do you stay calm when your world is falling apart? Mike suggested I seek professional advice, maybe talk to a counselor or a lawyer before making any moves. Don't do anything rash. Think this through, he advised. That conversation with Mike was a lifeline. It didn't solve my problems, but it gave me a bit of clarity, a momentary respite from the chaos of my emotions. He was right. I couldn't let my emotions drive my actions. But that was a tall order, especially when every fiber of my being was screaming for some sort of action, some kind of retribution. So there I was, Reddit, caught in the eye of an emotional hurricane, trying to make sense of the senseless. My journey was far from over, and the hardest part was yet to come. Stay tuned, because what happened next was something I never could have prepared for. Hi again, Reddit. Kenneth here. After all the emotional chaos and nights of planning, it was time to face the music. I had to confront Melissa. But how? I needed a plan, a strategy that would leave no room for her to wriggle out of the truth. I wanted her to know that I knew, but more importantly, I needed to see her real reaction, unfiltered and genuine. I decided the best approach was to catch her off guard. I needed the element of surprise on my side to see her raw, unguarded response. It wouldn't be easy. Melissa was sharp, and if she sensed something amiss, she might put up her defenses. I needed to be subtle, yet direct. So, I came up with a plan. I'd act normal for a few days, go about our routine as if nothing had changed. This part was tough, Reddit. Acting like everything was okay, talking and laughing with her, all the while knowing what I knew it felt like playing a role in a twisted play. During these days, I paid extra attention to her habits, her schedule. I noticed she'd been a bit distracted lately, probably due to her own guilt. I used this to my advantage. I told her I had to go on a sudden business trip for a couple of days, a believable lie, given my job. But instead of going on a trip, I stayed in the city at a friend's place. The plan was to return home unexpectedly the next evening, when she'd likely be feeling relaxed, thinking she had the apartment to herself. That evening, my heart was pounding as I made my way back to our apartment. The closer I got, the more the suspense built up. It felt like I was stepping into a showdown, the climax of a story that had been building up for far too long. I reached our building, took a deep breath, and walked up to our door. My hand was shaking a bit as I unlocked it. The apartment was quiet. I stepped in, trying to make as little noise as possible. There she was, in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, completely unaware of my return. She looked up, startled, as I walked in. "Kenneth, what are you doing here? I thought you were." Her voice trailed off as she saw the look on my face. "Surprised to see me?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. The look on her face, Reddit, it was a mix of shock, fear, and something else, guilt maybe. It was hard to read. But one thing was clear, she hadn't expected me, and that's exactly what I wanted. "Kenneth, what's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" she stammered, setting her wine glass down. "We need to talk, Melissa." It's about time we had a real conversation, I said, my heart racing but my voice calm. And there we were, standing in our living room, the stage set for a confrontation that had been brewing for far too long. The air was thick with tension, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. So, Reddit, this was the moment of truth. The moment I'd been preparing for. Stay tuned, because what came next was a conversation I'll never forget.
Hey Reddit, Kenneth here again. The moment had arrived, the confrontation I had been both dreading and eagerly anticipating. My heart was racing as I stood there in our living room facing Melissa. This was it, the moment of truth.
Melissa, we need to talk about your meetings, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes widened slightly, a hint of panic flickering across her face. What meetings? I don't know what you're talking about, Kenneth, she replied, her voice a mix of confusion and defensiveness. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I knew I had to keep it in check. I'm talking about the meetings you've been having with other men, Melissa, the ones you've written about in your diary. I watched her closely, looking for any sign of her crumbling facade. Her face turned pale. My diary? You read my diary? She gasped, her voice rising. That's private. You had no right. I was ready for this, the deflection, the outrage. I think I had every right when it concerns our marriage, I countered firmly. I found it by accident, but what I read. Melissa, how could you? She started pacing, her hands wringing together. Kenneth, you're misunderstanding things. It's not what you think. They're just fantasies, nothing real. I haven't cheated on you. But I was prepared. Fantasies. Is that why I found receipts for hotels, charges for dinners at places we've never been together? Is that why you've been so distant lately? Her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for an escape. Kenneth, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. I love you. I would never do anything to hurt you. The denials, the gaslighting, it was all there. But I had one more card to play. Melissa, I followed you one evening. I saw you with him. I saw the way you were together. The color drained from her face. There was a long, heavy silence. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, You followed me?
Yes, Melissa. I needed to know the truth, and now I do. My voice was calm, but inside, I was a storm of emotions.
The room was thick with tension. Melissa sat down, her posture deflated, the fight gone out of her. Kenneth, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Sorry. The word echoed in my mind. Was it enough? Could it ever be enough? So there we were, Reddit, in the ruins of our marriage, surrounded by the debris of lies and betrayal. The confrontation I had imagined so many times had unfolded, but the feeling of victory I had expected was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was just emptiness, a hollow realization that things would never be the same again. Stay tuned, folks. The story doesn't end here. The aftermath of that confrontation led me down paths I never expected to walk. Hey Reddit, Kenneth back again. After that confrontation, I thought I'd feel a sense of relief, maybe even victory. But all I felt was a crushing weight of reality sinking in. Our marriage, which I had believed to be built on love and trust, was now in shambles. Here's how I dealt with the fallout. In the days following our confrontation, our apartment became a silent battlefield. Melissa and I moved around each other like ghosts, barely speaking. The air was heavy with unspoken words and lingering resentment. She tried to initiate conversations a few times, probably to explain or apologize, but I wasn't ready to hear any of it. My bold and unforgiving nature was at the forefront, leaving no room for her excuses. I spent long hours staring out the window, watching the city move while my own life felt stuck in a standstill. My mind kept replaying the confrontation, her admissions, and the years of deception. Anger and betrayal battled with the remnants of love I still felt. It was a confusing mix of emotions that I struggled to process. During this time, I leaned heavily on my friend Mike. He was my sounding board, letting me vent, offering advice, or sometimes just sitting in silence with me. His support was invaluable. But as the days passed, the practicalities of our situation started to demand attention. We couldn't continue living like this in a constant state of tension and avoidance. I began to think about separation, the logistics of it, the inevitability of it. It was a tough pill to swallow, the end of a relationship I had invested so much in. One evening, I finally broke the silence. Melissa, we need to talk about what comes next. My voice was steady, but inside, I was anything but calm. We sat down, two people who had once been inseparably in love, now negotiating the terms of our separation. It was surreal, discussing who would move out, how we would divide our things, and what this meant for our future. Melissa seemed resigned, a stark contrast to her usual fiery self. Maybe she too had accepted the reality of our situation. The decision was made. I would stay in the apartment, and she would move out. We agreed to keep things as amicable as possible, for the sake of the years we had shared. But as practical as we tried to be, the emotional undercurrent was hard to ignore. This was more than just a change of living arrangements. It was the end of a chapter in our lives. In the following weeks, Melissa moved her things out. Each item she took felt like a piece of our life together being removed. It was a tangible reminder of the impermanence of relationships, of how quickly things can change. So there I was, Reddit, left in an apartment that once felt like a home, now just a space filled with memories. The fallout from Melissa's betrayal and our confrontation had led me here alone, trying to piece together what to do next. It was a period of reflection, of rebuilding, and most importantly, of healing. Stay with me, folks. The journey isn't over yet. The path to healing and moving forward was a road less traveled, with its own set of twists and turns. After the fallout of the confrontation and dealing with the immediate aftermath, it was time to face the future. The path to resolution was not just about putting legal and logistical pieces in place. It was also about emotional healing and rediscovering who I was without Melissa. First things first, I had to tackle the legal and practical aspects of our separation. It was a tedious and sometimes painful process, dealing with lawyers, diving into the nitty-gritty of who gets what, and signing papers that officially marked the end of our marriage. Each signature felt like closing a chapter, a mix of sadness and relief. I was saying goodbye to a significant part of my life, but I was also opening the door to new possibilities. During this time, I did a lot of reflecting. I thought about my relationship with Melissa, trying to understand where things went wrong. I realized that while her betrayal was the breaking point, there were signs of trouble long before the diary. We had become more like roommates than partners, comfortable, but not truly connected. I had to acknowledge my part in that. But dwelling on the past wasn't going to help me move forward. So I started planning for the future. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that challenged and engaged me. I reconnected with old friends, went out more, and even picked up new hobbies. I started cycling, something I had always wanted to do, but never got around to. It was liberating, feeling the wind against my face, the road stretching ahead, much like my life. Mike was a constant presence, encouraging me to get out and live. "You're in control now, Ken. Make the most of it," he would say. And he was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in the driver's seat of my life. I made decisions based on what I wanted, not what was expected of me or what was comfortable. Through this journey, I learned a lot about myself. I realized that I'm stronger than I thought, capable of overcoming betrayal and heartbreak. I discovered the importance of self-care, of looking after my own emotional and mental well-being. And perhaps most importantly, I learned that it's okay to let go, to move on from things that no longer serve you. So there I was, Reddit, at the end of a long and tumultuous road. The pain of the past was still a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I was moving forward, one step at a time, building a life that was all about me and my choices. Stay tuned for the final update. Hello again, Reddit. Kenneth here for one last update. It's been a journey, hasn't it? From the moment I found Melissa's diary to this point, where I'm typing out what feels like the final chapter of a long, turbulent saga. So let's dive in. The divorce is finalized now. It's strange to say it out loud, I am no longer Melissa's husband. The end of our marriage was a turning point, a definitive closure to a significant part of my life. It was hard, one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was necessary. It marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of something new in my life, on my terms. Reflecting on this entire experience, I've learned a lot. I learned about resilience, the kind that's forged in the fires of betrayal and heartbreak. I discovered strength I never knew I had, the kind that comes from picking yourself up when your world falls apart. And I learned about forgiveness, not necessarily for Melissa, but for myself. Forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for being a part of a failed marriage. It's been a process, but I'm getting there. As for my hopes for the future, they're brighter than I ever thought possible in the midst of my ordeal. I've started to reimagine my life, exploring possibilities that were once just distant thoughts. I've been traveling more, something I always wanted to do but never got around to. I've visited places I'd only seen in pictures, met new people, experienced different cultures. It's been eye-opening and incredibly liberating. I've also dived back into the dating pool, slowly but surely. I'm not rushing into anything, just enjoying meeting new people and experiencing new connections. I'm more cautious now, more aware of what I want and what I don't want in a relationship. It's a learning curve, but an exciting one. But the most significant change has been within me. I've embraced a new perspective on life, one that values the present, cherishes genuine connections, and looks forward to the future with optimism. I'm more in touch with who I am, what I want in life, and how I want to live it. So, Reddit, here I am, a man who went through one of the toughest times in his life and came out the other side stronger and more self-aware. It wasn't easy, but it was a journey worth taking. I've found closure, I've embraced my new life, and I'm excited about what the future holds. Thank you all for following my story, for your advice and your support. It's been an incredible comfort to share this journey with a community of strangers who became a part of my story. Here's to new beginnings and a future full of possibilities. Signing off, Kenneth.